Good morning. Welcome to the October 21st, 2014 monthly work session from 9:30 this morning until about 3. We will meet here, and this portion is televised, and we'll go over 4 areas, and then we will take a lunch break and convene in room 315. First up, we have Local Instructional Improvement System, which we acronym to LIIS, correct, Denise? And we have Denise Cantalupo to discuss this with us. Denise, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Superintendent White, Ms. Goodwin. Yes, you can hear me? Ms. Brown, Ms. Zucker, Ms. Ziegler, can you? Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you very much for having us here today. We're very proud of this system, and we wanted to bring you up to date on the instructional improvement system and to introduce you to some very new features. There's one thing I want to keep for you to keep in mind as we go through this. You're going to see a lot of detail, and you'll see some slides, and you'll see some graphs and some things that we've added to the system over time. But the main purpose of this and the basic function that it serves is to help teachers' lives be a little bit easier. The main goal is that we could put a bunch of systems and processes in place, drawing from many databases, so that when a teacher goes to work every day, they're able to access the things that they need in a very easy way. The second part of that, which I'll get to in a minute, was that these systems now talk and they link. Many of these systems before lived in isolation, so that a teacher, if they wanted to go to a certain place, they would have to search for it. And we didn't want that to happen anymore. So that's the goal. You'll also see many folks coming up and presenting different pieces of it, because that's also the beauty of the system, is that it really relied on many, many people. They're not all here today, but I'm going to try through the presentation to acknowledge them, as many as I can remember, because there were so many voices into this, and that takes effort. It's one thing to design a database and to keep it in your little world and to serve your function. And what I've learned over many years is that you design something and you think it's going to work, and then when you send it out to teachers, they're like, I didn't need that. But we really tried and really tried to pull in input from teachers, administrators, under the direction of Ms. White and Dr. Roca, all of directors and department heads crossing and talking to teachers on each component and then how it looks as a whole. So that's very important to keep in mind. That's why you see this. And I could have had 50 more people here that could have spoke to this, but I think it would just become too long. But that's very important to remember, because it will evolve. It will grow. One of the other key features that this is a co-creation. You know, we have some pieces that were in place, we had other pieces that weren't in place. And we knew that we had to develop those features, because there's one thing I've also learned, and we've all learned, I think, is that what is in place tomorrow will not be needed today, will not be needed tomorrow. And they're going to change, and the legislation will change, and what we're required to do will not be what we're required to do. So we had to have the manpower and the brain power here, so that we could adjust to these changes. And that was another key feature of the system. So although it seems complex, to teachers, hopefully it won't seem complex. It'll be really simplified. But on the back end, we're constantly learning and working, because just as the legislation won't be the same, the programs won't be the same. We have to constantly be up to par on this, and that's why you have all of these people, because no one person knows it all.
Denise, I want to add just a little bit so that the board appreciates the uniqueness of this. Probably 4 years ago, between 3 and 4 years ago, we realized that the local instructional improvement system is a state requirement. By statute, we are required, every district is required to have a system that meets certain parameters. It became clear to us that there wasn't anything on the market that did what we wanted it to do, and connecting lots of systems to one point that teachers and administrators could access. And those that had pieces were a subscription type of product. That means you would be paying a per student cost or per teacher cost every year. So Denise had a different vision. of what we needed to do. And I will tell you, she had to do some talking to me before I was willing to take the risk, because there was risk in what she was suggesting. She was suggesting that we create our own system and actually have the code and the programmers using other vendors to help us with that process. Started working with a group out of FSU to even design it, because we had to really design what is it going to look like. And she worked very closely with them. It was too much for them to take on the actual programming, so we went with another vendor to work with us in programming the system, who, frankly, we have worked to death. And but they also now share in a system that is very unique in the state of Florida, meeting a lot of needs. So at the end of the day, this was Race to the Top money that funded the majority of this. We wanted to invest in something that could be sustained in the future and would not continue to take resources to keep it up. And we didn't want to be at the mercy of a vendor in getting changes that we felt were critical for our teachers. So we have, through Dr. Cantalupo's leadership, and all the people that have been willing to work together on this huge project, we have something that I believe is the envy of everyone else in the state of Florida. And we've got it in a situation where we don't have to continue to pay out. It will continue to require investments, but we will be able to make it what we want in this district, what we need, without having that subscription type of format. So I really believe Dr. Cantalupo gave us a vision that will serve this district well for the next decade, because of the risk and the unique relationship she said we need to have with a vendor. Rather than just being a customer, we are a co-developer who ultimately understands the programming and code behind this system, so we can make the changes that we feel are necessary. So I want you just to appreciate what she has done for this district.
Well, thank you.
I also think it's great that she's doing this and that we're using those Race to the Top dollars, because so often you'll get grant dollars and you use them, or you put something in place and then those dollars disappear, and what have you got left? This is truly an investment of those dollars that's going to continue to pay dividends long after, well, those dollars have stopped coming.
And seamless integration is always something that you look for in an IT system, and it really does save a lot of time for teachers, and it saves a lot of time in instruction. It's such education is such an involved business that a lot of the providers are not in a position to know exactly what to develop unless they have a close work with us. So this is really great, and I'm very pleased to hear this.
I like the fact that we've taken some heat for taking the Race to the Top dollars, and I'm very happy to hear that this was funded through Race to the Top dollars, so it makes sense for why we took those Race to the Top dollars. Right. This is the first time I've heard something concrete that I think our community can understand where those dollars were spent. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and there's so many people in this room I thank every day because of their help with this. And you all made a perfect segue, because I want to introduce Amy Donnery. Many of you know her. She works endlessly behind the scenes, and she was the one that worked with the Race to the Top application. She was the one that keeps us out of trouble with the budget and the audit. And Jill Glespin, who's sitting behind us, the bookkeeper on the project. I want to recognize them. And Amy, why don't you tell us a little of the history of Race to the Top?
Oh, there it is. Can you all hear me? Okay. So Race to the Top, as you probably know, is a federal program, actually. It was a competitive grant process from the U.S. Department of Education. Florida was a winner in the second round, $700 million, of which they determined that half of that, so $350 million, would go directly to districts based on Title I allocations. And our number of Title I students isn't so great, so our allocation was is relatively small at $3.5 million. That we have been spending very judiciously, very carefully over the years. It's funded a number of projects, including lesson study, lots of professional development for teachers on the standards, on instructional strategies. It's also boosted some CTE programs and some STEM programs. It's also designed to help with the evaluation system and the compensation plan, but most importantly, the IIS. And when we were first told of our allocation, the state didn't tell us how to spend that money. It was up to us to divide it amongst those projects. And I know Denise worked hard working with top-level administrators and possibly some of the board members to figure out how to allocate those funds. And the determination was that most of that money should go into the IIS. It was the thing that was going to make the biggest difference in student achievement, which is the goal of Race to the Top, because it helps teachers directly with instruction with students, helps them see where students are, helps them it helps that data inform instruction, helps them with their own professional development and evaluation. So it's just an all-around good system and a good way to spend the funds. So that's where our funds have sort of how Race to the Top has been spent. Every quarter, I have to put in a budget amendment. We're up to number 18. So the disadvantage is that every quarter I'm doing a budget amendment, but the advantage is that gives us a lot of flexibility in how we spend our funds. You'll see later we have a stoneware product that I don't think 4 years ago we even knew existed. And when we heard about it, we were able to adjust our budget, jump on that opportunity, and put it in place to make the IIS even better. So that when I am not actually doing the budget, I think it's a great thing. When I'm actually working on it, I'm not so happy about it. But it has been, I think, a great bit of money for us to get some of these important things done. So, any questions for me before
I would like to say one thing to you publicly, and that is to thank you for your help with the $1.2 million grant from the Department of Education, federal program to help 4 of our schools with arts integration.
Thank you.
And
it's
we were
always a
talking
team,
about
so
you
it's
at a
not just
meeting
me,
this
but-
morning that we had, our oversight committee, in the Blue Awning Building. We were talking about you and what a wonderful thing that was, because that is a 4-year program, and it gives us the ability of integrating arts with our curriculum, and that's so very important to keep students interested and keep the right brain moving and help them with their skill set. So we know how much you worked on that.
you.
That was one of the big
you.
grants. So thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. And always it's a team with people with great ideas. I can't make it work if there aren't great ideas. So it's always a pleasure to work with people in this district on things like that. So
How's your back?
I try.
Make sure you don't deviate from the course.
I try. I spend a lot of time delivering deliverables. So, any questions on Race to the Top or funding? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for letting me speak.
What was the total dollar amount?
For us, it was $3.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
There actually have been since then smaller grants that are coming through. I think as DOE hasn't spent some of their money, they're kind of passing it down to us. So I think in total it's been around $4 million. A lot of that recently has been for professional development, which is a great thing. So
Always very targeted allocations for specific purposes, but mostly instructional.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to ask you guys, we have people driving for me. This slide is just really, and I said a lot of this, but it's really to demonstrate the integration across departments. And from 1,000 feet, we can see, how curriculum assessment, PD, and evaluation were pulled together in this project. Trying to keep up with all of our technology, making sure this is web-based, making sure we're linking together, and making sure that we use the best technology. Because even 4 years ago, we started out with certain browsers, and now we have to change to other browsers. So it's an ongoing process. But because, again, we have a creative team, we're able to adjust to that. And this is really talking about, and Lori had mentioned, the ThinkGate vendor. They were really I'm not sure if they are still as happy with us as at the beginning of the grant, because we really held them to the grant in that it was a co-development effort. There were many vendors like to sell their product, they wanted canned, but there was no way that we could do this canned because we had so many great pieces and then we needed other things. So we work with them actually in conversations almost daily. They're probably very tired of us at this point, but it's okay. And it's a teacher tool, of course, designed, linking these areas and funded through Race to the Top. These are the 5 huge pieces that are embedded, and I wanted to start here because you're going to see some more discrete pieces that we're going to showcase. There's a lot to it. For progress monitoring, we have a variety of reports that are available and will be available. And this is for direct teacher access to summative and formative data in a timely way, so that when students take tests, we can put those results up there very quickly. And you'll see that a lot of them are historical, so that a student just doesn't come with his last FCAT score. You can see all of his FCAT scores, at least going back 5 years. And now, of course, we'll transition to the FSA. And some others, which I'll talk to you about in detail. We also have the new item bank and test platform, which the state has released recently. We'll be using it the first time this year. We are beginning to use it. That will be integrated into this. Sue Meckler will speak about curriculum and instructional resources, talking about the wonderful IFG effort, talking about how this links with Learn, and the Destiny Library Management System. Again, all these pieces were separate, but now they're together. Carly and others will come up, and there was such a great effort this past year in the multi-tiered system of support. You'll see some really neat snapshots from there. I think you're going to love it. We always have been doing MTSS, but we had no way to store intervention over time, so that the teacher would do an intervention, but we had no way to broadcast to everybody else that had that child, this is what they've been working on. And so now we can do that. It's linked to the ESD system, and that's very important. We pull data from ESD and the Student Information System. That is something that has to be, because you cannot have 2 different databases with different information. Okay? They're entirely for different functions, but we had to make sure that the course schedules that were in ESD were pulled to us, that the staff data and student data that were in ESD were pulled to us in order to make them useful in these products. So just a simple example would be that the course schedules change all the time. In order to slice and dice reports for the teacher, we need to know that schedule. Okay? So if a child moves from teacher A to teacher B, he's now in teacher B's class. And that is all the result of pulling the course schedule in. And then professional development was where we started and where we'll end up at the end of this year. And we started because of state statute with evaluations. And we'll talk about that and the transparency of the process in a few minutes. And then we have, which I think is one of the best features, is this observation tool, which we'll go over. And then in the coming year, we'll be modifying our professional development system and making it more robust. We'll be integrating where we can store the training, the in-service that teachers have received, their certifications, and hopefully we want to make it so that it links, so that if you want information, let's say in curriculum and those resources, that we have available training in the professional development system where you can learn more about that. So everything crosses systems. And it is a work that's continuously, as we see new insights, we try to make that happen. The next slide is an ugly slide, and I apologize for it, but I have to go here because this is sort of the blueprint behind it. And I have to emphasize something. All of these pieces and boxes and charts are the way that this is sort of embedded in our brains because of linking. But at one time, these databases and processes lived in silos. They lived on people's desktops and spreadsheets in certain departments that didn't even know they were in that department until we tried to find something for the state to do a report, and then we were like, who has that? You know, so, but now, because, and I have to compliment him here, I'm going to be doing this throughout, because of the work of George Goodfellow and Kevin White, and others in the IT department, we were able to link these systems. George is the kind of guy, I don't know if you know him, George Goodfellow over here, kind of, a lot of these people are such silent partners, you don't know them, I have to bring them to your attention because their brains are amazing. The fact that I could say, hey, George, where can we get certification? Where's that stored? He goes, I think there's a database over in HR I can tap into. and he'd find it. You know, I mean, unbelievable stuff. You can't believe the complexity. And he's able to speak in I don't know how many different languages on a computer that he can bring this in. And I'll talk about Kevin White in a minute when we get to evaluation. Another young man, tremendous brain power, I guess good genes, but tremendous in his ability to adapt and to work with this system and change on the fly with no complaints. I mean, you imagine an office, I'm so blessed. They never complain. It's like, we have to do this in this much time, and they're like, okay. And they just do it. So, tremendous. But you had to see this. Now you can forget about it, but you had to. George is going to talk about single sign-on right now, because without single sign-on, this is very difficult for a teacher.
Good morning, everybody. The state has released some applications for the educators to simplify their process. And one of the challenges is with any program, you have a username and a password.
Mike.
Let's try that again. Okay. So the state released, there's 6 applications they released for educators to help their daily workload be a little bit easier. But with any application, you have to log in, and you have a password. And you have another application, and it's a different login, and it's a different password. Multiply that by the 6 that the state released, plus the ones that we have locally. Now, some people have all these passwords and names on sticky notes around their computer screen, or maybe it's underneath their keyboard, you know, stuff like that. So one of the solutions is what's called single sign-on. And the idea behind that is you log in one time, one password, you have access to the applications that you need. So you won't have access to all the applications, just the ones that you have privileges to. So the state's solution to that, and it's very similar to the chart that was on the screen previously. It looks very, very complicated, but for the end user, it's very simple. So that's the real thing, is for the educators, we want to make this extremely simple process so that all that the users have to do is they log in. For the teachers, it's their A number. It says all tapped to the Active Directory, and they know that password, they know that username, they just use those credentials. Now they have access to everything else. They don't have to remember, oh, I'm going into the state system, I need this credential. Oh, I'm going over to the item bank test platform, I need a different set of credentials. It's all one set of credentials. To further explain that, Todd, we'll let Todd transition to the next slide, because there's some really good things that we've done that will allow educators to access not only the state resources, but also local resources. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that the LAIS didn't have, if we had released that little schematic to everybody with a bunch of charts and lines and arrows, it didn't have a face and an interface so that people could log on like that. George explained the process, but it was Todd who found a product working on something entirely different. He said, Janice, I found something that would work with the solution. And that's another example of how these departments work together and looked out for each other. He was looking, and he said, wow, that's going to work for Denise, and he grabs me to go up to Marion County and look at it. So we were able to introduce this part. Thanks, Todd.
Okay. Good morning. So, as Denise said, I work in instructional technology, and one of the challenges that we've had for a number of years, and I'm sure you probably have outside of work, is the number of passwords that you have to manage, the number of logins that you have to manage. It's extensive. Mine was, I think, last count, it was 86 usernames and passwords, and some of that's because of my job. But for our students and for our teachers, it continues to be a problem, or had continued to be a problem. And the concern that we had was, you know, a student coming home and sitting there at the dinner table with their parents, and the parents say, what did you learn today? And the response is something like, well, I learned how to find my textbook and how to log into it, which is really not what we want. We want them to quickly be able to log into the resources that they need to get to and to quickly access the content instead of the overhead of finding how to get into the system. So
that single entry is not only for the teachers and the staff of the school district, but also for the students and the parents?
Yes, it's for excuse me, right now it is for students and staff. It is not for parents.
Okay, students, but parents can get it through that. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. So What we started looking at was a product called Stoneware. Stoneware is used in about 30 different districts throughout the state of Florida, which we see some benefit from because we can call up other districts and say, have you worked on this solution? Have you worked on that solution? And get a little bit of synergy from that. One of the key factors in this system is that it is what we call role-driven. And what that means is my son is a sophomore at Venice High School. The resources that he needs are unique to a sophomore at Venice High School. There's no real reason for him to see some of Denise's systems or to even be exposed to them at all because he's not a staff member, he's not a teacher. What this system does is it will say, okay, this student is a sophomore at Venice High, therefore here are the items that he needs to see. An elementary student will see something different than a middle school student. A middle school student will see something different than a high school student. A staff member may see something different than a student, and depending on what their role is within the staff, they'll see something different. So it's complex on the backside, but what it does for our users is it makes it easier. It cuts down on the overhead of them having to remember all these usernames and passwords and locations.
What
Mrs.
I wanted
Zucker?
to ask you was that, so you have a sophomore who's entering into the system, and he's only allowed to enter into sophomore curriculum?
He is assigned the curriculum
Driven by the course schedule.
driven by the course schedule.
So,
Correct.
All right, let me concrete. I have a grandson who is a level or 2 levels ahead. So will he be able to access what his level is, or just? 'Cause
Absolutely.
when you say sophomore,
No.
you put a cage around it for me.
No,
I wanted to
absolutely.
know
So,
if they could go beyond
if
that.
your grandson is working 2 levels ahead, we can recognize that in our kind of the back end systems and see this student, even though they're in 3rd grade, is working on content that's at 5th grade, and therefore the content would be assigned to them.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it was too square a box for me there.
Okay. So if we can go on to the next slide. So an important feature for this was that it is accessible from anywhere. We wanted to make sure that students could access this and teachers could access this from home, that they could access this from work, from their phones, from their tablets. And so it's a web-based system that accounts for any of those types of different access points. The login screen, you can see on the slide here or on your handouts. So teachers log in with their A number and whatever credential they happen to use to log in with their computer. Students log in the same way. They use an N number, and then they have a 5-digit PIN that they log in with. Once they log in, depending again on their role, they're going to see the tiles that are appropriate for them, and the things that aren't appropriate for them, if they, for example, your grandson is not going to see the employee portal because he's not an employee.
Right.
Right.
How long have we been live with this system?
3 months, I believe. So the other thing that this allows us to do is it allows us to group and to manage our content according to, I guess, to logically try to make sense of it. So we can, if something makes more sense for elementary students and to have it grouped one way for elementary students, we can do that. For staff members, we can group it another way. The one thing I did want to mention is, you brought up how long has this system been live. It's been live for 3 months. But we've had about 25,000 of our staff and students log in so far. I can tell you from an IT system perspective, that's a great number. Very rarely do we see a system where it's voluntary to use, but we have that type of traction on it. So I think it's really filling a role that or a need that we have. And again, like Denise said, it filled her needs. The nice thing is this happens to allow us to service our students as well and to kind of piggyback on that. Are there any questions? Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to go. we're going to look back and look at certain pieces of the system that I think are really important components. We won't hit everything, but we're going to take a step back to the first year. And the first year we were charged with going to the teacher evaluation system and digitizing it. We had to, we always had a teacher evaluation system. We had Pride, but we never had to quantify it before. And the reason we did is because we had to somehow join it with student growth for the new teacher evaluation model. So what you see here are two pieces of our teacher evaluation system. The top box is a snapshot of Pride. We had to digitize it, make it quantitative, but the nice thing, and you can't really see it here, but in the last column, Kelly Ellington was a very important player with this, and what she did, in addition to training people on all of this, is she linked professional resources to each Pride competency. So,
Could you explain what PRIDE stands for?
Lori, can you go to the acronym? It is our professional evaluation system, the qualitative part, so that when a teacher is evaluated each time, they get, and my apologies for that. Can you say, can you?
I don't know the
I would be very impressed. In any case, these links on the side lead to professional development. So if a teacher didn't do well in a particular competency, they could click right there and get some more information on it. So that was a wonderful achievement. The second part is a snapshot of a teacher's student growth component. I think we've all experienced, having been in school, when you get some scores back from some test you've taken and you have no idea what they mean. You know, I remember looking at my SAT for College Board and saying, okay, what's this mean? But what we wanted to do here was make it completely transparent for teachers, that they could see student growth over time, and they could see what scores went into that particular score. What you don't see here is we also have resources available on this page where teachers can see how we did the calculations and so forth. And then painstakingly, George and Kevin actually bring every line of text in here for the past 3 years that tells what score these teachers had going back 3 years. Another piece of this with the student growth and that we had to do, which ThinkAid did not do, is that we had to come up with statistical models behind each one of these. You can't just group a bunch of scores together on different scales and make it work. So I want to acknowledge Kevin White, who I'm not asking to speak today, but he will before I retire up here. Kevin White worked endlessly on these models, and we had started with 4. We ended up with over 11 this year, and I'm sure we'll be at 20 by the end of this year. So that's one piece. The next piece is the observation system, and this really, I will give our superintendent credit for the idea, and this does not exist anywhere else. We've had observation systems, and I couldn't remember it this morning. What was the past observation where we went in? We had others that we worked digitally and tried to work on, but we could never get the data back. And we would call these companies and say, can I have the data back from this series of observations? And they would charge us, or they'd want to charge us. And I was like, but it's our data. And they still didn't care. So this system, why it's wonderful, is that not only is it homegrown and built here, a Sarasota system, is that the administrators go in and they can observe classes, but then immediately the teacher can log in and see what the observation was. And Lori wanted complete transparency so that there would be no lag time, that teachers could go in, and then this would be a coaching model, not a gotcha model. This would be where we could come in and the teacher could go in, and if they had an issue with the observation, they could talk about it right away. The worst thing is to have people brood about things and then causes all kinds of controversy. Here, they could go in, and it's usually constructive. Very constructive. And if a teacher didn't feel that something was apparent to the administrator, they could bring that to the administrator's attention and vice versa. So, wonderful Sarasota system. I'm going to show you a few reports that are either developed already or in the works and will be out shortly. This is an assessment detail report, the state assessment detail report. This allows us to go back to 5 years of data by the school, by the class, by the student. So a teacher, because we have their schedules, they can log in here, and if they want to see at the beginning of school next year all the history of that child in front of them, they can see it. So they have an idea. Yes, ma'am.
One thing I've wondered is, if if a teacher has a student that's not performing well, well, where was that student last year or the year before? So this tells us at what school, or say if they came from out of state, if they came from a charter school or a private school. Will we have that information here so that we know, or do we only have from where the student started in Sarasota County Schools?
What we have here is the teacher is going into her current class and looking at the academic history. They're looking at their test performance. So it doesn't necessarily say which school they were at this point, something we can consider for the future. But that type of data is on the ESD system, the complete record of the child. But that's another report that's easy to do. Right, George? But that we could possibly put into that.
Yeah, because I think at some point, because it's not where the student is right here today, how he's performing. It's where he was yesterday and the year before and the year before. And if we can see patterns in that,
Right.
That maybe we can look to do something.
Right.
Because we have kids coming in and out of the traditional public school systems.
Right, exactly.
And I would like to see if there, in fact, is any models that we can look at.
Alongside their achievement data.
Yes.
I can understand. If you turn, and I'm going to go, I don't want to take up too much time with this, but any questions you have, I can certainly fill you in. Early warning report. This is a system that is going to be active pretty quickly that we've been working on. And what this does is for the school down to the teacher level, in the classroom to the student level, will identify for the teacher who's at risk on a number of different indicators, and there's some algorithms behind this that puts it into a formula where we say whether they're at risk or not. Some of the key features it indicates, the algorithm takes into account the GPA. It takes into account whether the child was retained, whether they're ESE or ELL, their prior test performance on a multitude of tests, including even here we were able to say where they were expected to score in reading and math using the VAM model, the state's model. So those are pretty indicators that could be annual, but we also included behavioral indicators. What was their attendance like in the last 30 days, and what was their retention like? Referrals. Did they have any referrals in the last 30 days? So we can continuously, or the teacher can continuously monitor these children. So the status might be changing, depend on that. Another report will be the formative assessment report. Currently, you have to go to multiple places to get the benchmark data or the FAIR data. We want to pull that into one report. It's already designed, it's in the working, and we're trying it now. That this way a teacher can get a snapshot after every benchmark test, which we give 3 times a year in the case of FAIR, where they can see where the student is performing. The other thing I didn't mention about this, it's not just for core teachers. Every teacher can go in here. Every teacher can see every student in their class. So if you're a PE teacher or if you're an art teacher, and even though you may not have an art test yet, you can go in here and see how these kids in your class are performing. And then two others I'll bring to your attention. And this is the formative assessment detail report. What this does after every benchmark test, it really shows how the students in the teacher's class performed on each standard that was tested. This is great for reteaching. You can see if they mastered it or they didn't master it, and then how to group students. So it's a wonderful, we've transitioned this report to reflect the Florida standards now and not next gen unless they're applicable. But a teacher can look at a glimpse after and this works within 24 to 48 hours. All this data is loaded, sliced and diced by standard. So that's very helpful. Shirley.
Can the teacher only view what's relevant to their specific class, or is
Correct.
that okay?
Correct. It all works by, and if you can think of it that way, the schedule. Because we don't want, unless they are designated as somebody that needs to see across classrooms, and you'll see more of that in MTSS.
But it could be a different content area, and they'd see all the assessment results. They see all the results for their students that are assigned to their class, regardless if what their content area is.
And so important in social studies, especially, and some other courses, for example, that really depend on reading, so they can see the reading level of the children. And then
could we kind of go over this formative assessment? Let's go over a line of this. You're Sue, so let's try Sue. Is in the 9th grade. Go across that with me and explain what a teacher sees and what this
and
means
which
to a
report are you
teacher.
referring to? This one?
The top one, the formative, which I
First
think
page,
is
formative
kind of
assessment
important.
monitoring
Yes.
report. What they'll see here and what's depicted is the student by their grade level, what their scores were percent correct on their benchmark assessment in the fall of 13-14, in the winter of 13-14, their science fall of 13-14, their science winter of 13-14, and their benchmark assessments. Now this scrolls longer. So you would even have in here, you'll have their FAIR data, their reading data, and then whatever benchmark tests we're giving that year. What we've decided upon for the past couple of years was to have, of course, the core with math, science, and reading. As we add tests that we think we need to benchmark, they would also appear here. And again, it's for everybody to see how they're doing, but the teachers use these reports to talk to parents. So we know that after the first quarter, after the first benchmark test in science, for example, they can see how the children are doing, what the percent correct was, and they can talk to parents and even break it down by standard on the next report and see what the child has mastered and has not. And we're finding more and more that the teachers are looking, and when they can't find the report or they don't have it, that's how we know that they're using them, is they're using them in those kind of parent conversations.
And are we giving the parents any informational sessions or anything about some of
We
these new
haven't
reports? Are we
yet, but
planning
we
to do
need
that?
to. So this way, the desire is there to ask for them. And I talked about the benchmark report. The last one I'll go over is this formative assessment disaggregated report. This is called a distractor analysis. And this is used for several purposes, and it's very important in testing from our world because we're able to see, as we build tests, if certain items are or not working. Okay, so if you have an item that is everybody's getting it wrong, we want to go look at that item. That's our world. However, what's more important is that the teachers, they could see if there are particular items that students are not getting right according to certain standards. They can see if there perhaps was some mislearning, I don't know if that's a word, but mislearning going on, where students are all picking one answer because they think that's the right answer, but really we need to reteach and see. You understand so much, you almost understand as much from what they choose in error that they do when they choose correct. So this will be a learning process. And we have had training sessions at the schools, but all of this is designed, and our specialists are being trained so that when they go out and train, they'll integrate this into their work.
If some of us would like to see a demonstration of this,
We
can
can
we
arrange
contact
for
you
that.
and do
Absolutely.
so? Because I think that would be very informative.
Good. At this point, I'm going to transition to curriculum. Sue Meckler is going to come up and talk about our curricular and instructional resources.
Good morning. I'm kind of looking at the clock here, and we've really allotted our 45-minute time for this presentation, so I'd like to kind of leave it up to you. I know you have a jam-packed schedule. The next two pieces of this, the curriculum and instruction resources and the MTSS process, are really critical components. We're all very passionate about how everything links together. So we could try to do it in 15, or we could kind of stop and ask to be invited back, or whatever you'd like to go? Okay. So we'll try to do the fast version, and again, if you have questions, please ask us. So talking about specifically the curriculum and instruction component, as you know, as we've moved into the new Florida standards, we developed instructional focus guides rather than instructional focus calendars. The concept being that the guides are written of units of study where different standards are grouped together, and so that we know that learning happens as we integrate these standards rather than skill by skill by skill, day by day by day. We wanted to create an environment that was one-stop shopping for our teachers so that they had one place to go to gather everything they needed to support teaching and learning. So this instructional focus guide up here, Carly's going to click on the Blackboard link, which is one of the pieces of single sign-on. As a teacher goes through the My system, they'll click on the Blackboard link, and that Blackboard link would take them directly into the system within Blackboard Learn. As a Blackboard Learn teacher, all elementary teachers have access to every grade level. So that's really important for them so that they can look at that vertical articulation of what students need to know prior to and ahead of grade level. Every middle school teacher has access to all content areas so that we can look at how literacy is developed across all content, how math and science can help support one another. We also have included all core subjects, elementary through high school, and we've even started developing art and music at the elementary level and CTE at middle and secondary, middle and high school. And now our most recent is our Spanish teachers were so excited. They said, please help us develop an IFG for Spanish. And we've had requests for PE teachers throughout the district who often work in isolation to say we would love to have an instructional focus guide that we can use elementary, middle, and high school as well. This resource provides for them all of the information they need related to standards. It's all linked to our state database, which is CPALMS, includes instructional resources and materials that teachers can use for differentiation to meet the needs of their students where they are. It is an ongoing work in progress, which was developed for teachers by teachers. We included teachers in this process of developing them, and we were able to use Race to the Top funds to help support that development. So we're trying to get as much of this work in while we have the funding to do it to continue to elaborate on them. In addition to that, on the next page there, you'll see that we also eventually, through Stoneware, will have direct links to our e-sources. This has become a really critical resource for our teachers. When we hear teachers asking to find additional informational text to support teaching and learning across curricular areas, how can I find more materials at various reading levels? These e-sources become a really tremendous tool for our teachers. So regardless of what content or subject they're studying, teachers can go and find reading materials on that same subject at various reading levels to help support that.
I know that teachers aren't supposed to bring unapproved things into class, and so if they were to go out to the web and start pulling their own stuff in, that might be a problem. But anything they can access through
these are all
all approved.
Educationally appropriate. That is correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. In addition to that, then we have our Destiny Library Management System, which includes a way for teachers and students to search for materials that we have in our media centers across district. We have the ability to transfer materials school to school. So if a teacher wants to use more copies of a particular title, we can do that. We are also integrating our textbook inventory through this system so we can transfer textbooks from one school to another as needed. We've also linked our Safari Montage videos so that teachers who are enhancing their teaching and learning through using auditory clips, visual clips, those are all part of that process for them to use. So again, it's a work in progress, but we're very excited about how everything links, starting with data-driven instruction through all the work that Denise's department does to provide that immediate feedback for teachers on how their students are performing, and then to take it to instruction to improve for all students.
One tiny question.
Certainly.
Is there a way that teachers can then comment or rate the content of what it is they're pulling down? Because sometimes there's really good stuff out there and sometimes not so good.
Right. We have not put a value system on it per se, but what we have found out is through school-based collaborative planning teams, they're doing a lot of that sharing within house, and then we're starting to have teachers share across the district. When we're adding resources, we're vetting them at the district level and then sharing them with all teachers. But that social networking piece was a layer that we've considered. We just haven't got to that piece yet.
Good.
It is. It is. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is really great for learning this.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure where we are on time. I've lost track here.
We're now
so
about-
you want to go to MTSS? Yep. Now I'm going to introduce Carly Gordon, who has been very much a right hand in this MTSS process. Her work with Rex and Robin Marinelli is back here, and Sonia, I'm not sure if she's here, worked together on this process. I think you'll be quite impressed with it, but Carly's going to explain and walk through it.
Good morning. So MTSS, first question, what is MTSS and what does it offer? MTSS uses data-based problem solving to integrate academic and behavioral instruction and intervention. This is then used to provide students additional support at varying levels of intensity based on student need. The goal,
Could you give us an example?
Absolutely. Let's say a children is struggling with fractions. There's a group of children struggling with fractions in the class, and the teacher wants to do additional support. So she may create either a gap analysis or a tier 2 within the system that I'm going to show you, and as a way of documenting the process. And then during this process, she may identify 3 that can go back to the general ed population because they've got the fraction concept. 2 may need additional support and may move to the tier 3 process. So that's kind of the overscape of MTSS. Okay, so moving forward. Okay, so the design of the MTSS component was to continue the support of general education. We wanted the teacher to have easy access to the MTSS process, so we designed it as a component of the IIS. Users can easily create the necessary intervention, whether it be academic, behavioral, or attendance. This system has been established to provide a digital record that will travel with the students as they transition from school to school. So as teachers log in, they can immediately see which of their students are part of the MTSS process. If you'll notice, there's little badges by the students' names, well, the lack of students' names. These colors allow teachers to immediately see if they are part of a Tier 3, Tier 2, or a gap analysis. So by simply clicking on the icon, they are immediately able to see student demographics. Students are identified by clicking on any color on the left-hand panel, which will highlight the students' names on the right side.
One
interesting comment about this when we were presenting this out at schools is that frequently teachers knew who was ESE. You know, they had some records on the student, but often they didn't know who was gifted in the classroom. So by just clicking on the bar, they could find out what was the status of the child, and that was an eye-opener for them.
Right. Okay. So another click allows teachers to see their current and past assessment data from this screen, and the colors allow them to sort students who may be struggling on that assessment compared to mastering it. So the next screen is the MTSS home screen. The MTSS home screen allows the users to see current interventions, meaning the Tier 3 and the Tier 2 and the gap analysis we spoke of earlier. This screen was designed to allow the user to easily view required MTSS documentation intervention data.
Prior to this, all of these forms were paper and pencil.
Yes.
They were all kept in records, and then if a child transferred, those records had to be scooted around the district in hard copy. Now everything is digital, and wherever you are, whenever you're having one of these care meetings, you could go in and bring up the records of these kids. That's
Right.
the power of this.
Right. So the next screen is just an example of one of the MTSS documents, and what's great about them is there is no more filling out demographics, student names, address, parent information. This is auto-populated on every form for them, which is great. Also, if they complete the intervention process, the intervention data is brought in as well.
I was just going to say, so to clarify, if the child's going through this process and the teacher's working with certain interventions, this is now being recorded.
so that teacher A has a record of intervention when the child goes somewhere else. Oh. I always think I'm loud enough. When a teacher goes, when a student goes somewhere else and they're with another teacher and they need to look at a record of intervention, this child has been using this kind of curriculum, this kind of intervention, and it's worked or it's not worked, the teacher can then redirect their instruction.
Will there be a way in the future where we could use this data and we could work with the court system? I'm thinking of children that are possibly going into the DJJ system, and we could link this system with the court system so that the judge might be able to pull up the records of the students so we'd have a full picture of what it was, because they have much more power than we do. They can demand that the parents intervene where we can't do those things. I mean, they can.
Well, what we're doing right now is having an individual be the go-between, where they have access of the needed information and can vet what is appropriate and interpret, because you can see there's a level of interpretation required to know what this all means. So I think it's going to take a human being, but we're already working in the court system to provide that, looking for funding for that kind of on-site liaison to give the courts information and for us to receive information as well then that could be conveyed appropriately to staff in terms of what's happening with a family. So I think there's potential there, particularly if there's a human being involved.
I spoke to Sonia about this because I'm the one that hooked up the judge and the education piece together, and I'm going to try and help and find some funding through DJJ. But I was just wondering if at any point we would be able to not have that person need to sit there, but the judges be able to pull up those records without us putting a person there.
Probably this
We're not
level of
there yet.
detail, you want to have somebody to help interpret, because teachers understand the meaning of a benchmark versus a summative, and it's hard for to make sure all the judges understand that.
Okay, so moving forward to the next slide, intelligent linking. So the great piece about this is that we were able to take our IIS, our LIIS system, and hook it and let it communicate with other systems. So, for example, as this MTSS document is completed on the left, as users complete the data, there's a submit button which will transfer this information to the Enrich product, which is our ESE system.
Prior to this, nothing talked. But before a teacher gets to the process of referral, this way we have this whole permanent record now of all the interventions that were tried, how they were working, and then without having to then start all over again in ESE world, we just push the data forward.
Right.
So it really is a wonderful working relationship with the ESE department. We learned a lot about what had to go forth.
Okay, so and the other piece that I wanted just to kind of touch on is when we received this information from teachers and began this product, we got a stack of papers like this, which included great graphs, but all different kind of systems. There was no uniform to it. So with this system, now we have a graphical uniformed system, which everybody will have the same type of graph and the same information coming through it. It just kind of makes the understanding of the graph symmetrical.
So what you're seeing, and it's hard to see in the graphs, I understand, but you could see it's over time the progress that a group of students are making. And you can change the students, you can have a group of students or one child. You can also have a benchmark set, which the second graph shows going across, the straight line going across. This is where we want the student to achieve by such and such time period. And you can see whether the child is achieving it compared to another peer group. Yeah, and it makes it uniform, like Carly said. It was
right.
Lots of different graphs
going around. And the other
around.
piece is that all of these graphs are also tied to our documentation. So as the documents are created, this becomes supporting details for that.
Which would help in the kind of system you're thinking of. Well, I think we've reached the end. Finally, I want to say thank you to everybody for hearing us today. I know it was a lot. We'd be glad to present any of the more detailed pieces upon request. And I also put this slide up here because I'm getting old and I can't remember. I'm sorry? I'm on.
I just, in case I forgot anybody, so nobody get mad at me. All your thank yous are up there. There's so many accolades to so many people, and I want to thank you all, because if you didn't allow us the flexibility to do this, we couldn't have built it. And we'll continue to take input, any suggestions you may have, because it is a work in progress, and thank you again.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to say that, the role of a teacher is very complex today. And we are asking our teachers to do more and more, to intervene more and more. And those are all good things for learning and tailoring each instructional opportunity with each student separately, because they all learn at different levels. But there's an awful lot of work that's going into this. And my hat's off to you, because many schools don't bother to go into this. This is what makes Sarasota schools so unique and so special, is that we have the vision to do some of these hard projects. And I think we'll be receiving the fruits of this work and your work for some time to come. So thank you very much. But I will schedule a demo. I would like to sit down and see it more live and understand it, because I have teachers in my family, of course. So.
But I'd also like to thank you, because prior to this, we've had tons of papers that you would have to go through, or different systems that you'd have to connect. And I see this as a seamless system. We'll make it so much easier for our teachers and staff to be able to really follow the child and what is occurring with the child, what has occurred, and where you need them to go. I mean, this is just fantastic. Thank you all for your vision.
Thank you.
Well, and another thing I noticed in my business when we went digital is that all of a sudden those rooms full of file cabinets started disappearing. And when we built the new office, there was no room for file cabinets anymore. We didn't have that room, and we had very few file cabinets. And it's all on the computer, and it's so quick, and everyone has access to everything. And you don't have somebody to have to put all that stuff back in the cabinets too. So it definitely is saving money over and over and over again. What will we do with those rooms?
And I just want to say thank you. I love the communication piece. I think that's something that you see, especially in the transfer of schools or the transition of a child. I think that communication piece is huge. And I know that there's a lot of data out there, and this allows everyone to work together. So I think you guys are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have a presentation on the Venice Middle School Community Engagement Progress. And I'd like to call Kathy Ebaugh and Karen Schmidt, the principal of the wonderful Venice Middle School, forward. And we are running short on time, so if we can collapse, compress, that would be great.
Well, good morning, Board Member, Superintendent. I'm going to take just a minute or two to kind of introduce this topic and then turn it over to the people who really have a vested interest and have done all the hard work. Really, this piece of the workshop is informational to you, just to kind of bring you into the loop in a community engagement dialogue that we really started this past weekend, and Kathy Ebaugh is going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. But the introduction of the two ladies here is really important. Dr. Karen Schmidt, who is the proud principal of Venice Middle School, Kathy Ebaugh, who I introduced to you probably 2 months ago or so, as kind of the new, he's in the room, so he'll hate me for saying this, but kind of the new and improved Ken Marsh. She was hired as your director of long-range planning, but part of what she brought to us was a background in community engagement, which was part of what was really valuable to us as the interview committee looking for our long-range planner. One of the very first conversations that Lori and I had with Kathy, even before we offered her the job, was, would you be interested in or willing to participate in a community engagement effort in the city of Venice? Kathy is a parent of a student who's in a Venice area elementary school. She's a resident of the city of Venice, and she's a community planner, so she really grabbed a hold of this thing at the very beginning and ran with it. And I guess I tell you that story so that you understand that this community engagement is bigger than Dr. Schmidt, is bigger than Venice Middle School. This is the district recognizing its obligation to engage the community in issues like, what do you want out of your middle schools? Now, I will tell you that concept isn't new, though. This is something that Karen's been doing really since the very day she became the principal. She's been working on community engagement, and so what we're really trying to do is just kind of beef up what it is we're trying to do. Why is all this going on? There is a lot, in the city of Venice in particular, there's a lot of competition for middle school kids. Dr. Schmidt was telling a group of us the other day that if you leave the island of Venice and you drive to Venice Middle School, there are no fewer than 8 options for parents at the middle school level. Public, private, charter, alternative, 8 options. And part of what we want to do is, as parents are making that choice, make Venice Middle School their middle school of choice. And so I guess for me, this community engagement, which you're going to hear about here in just a second, has really 2 overarching purposes. Number 1 is to make sure that the community of Venice understands the great things happening at Venice Middle School today. Start off with the fact that they're an A middle school. Yep, great school. Make sure that the community is aware of what's just down the street. And then second is to hear from the citizens of Venice and the larger community, but particularly Venice, about what are their wants, needs, desires, aspirations for their middle schools, and then identify those that we can respond to in a meaningful way to make Venice Middle School their school of choice. So that's really what this effort is about. I think Dr. Schmidt is going to speak first, but I said a second ago that the community engagement effort kicked off this weekend. It was at Sun Fiesta in downtown. They actually had a booth. In fact, I was there this weekend, and Kathy and Karen were in the booth. But they had to go ahead and unveil the board. Actually, I think Kathy and Mickey were probably in that booth all night Friday night, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday. So if they're inarticulate, that's why. It's a lack of sleep. But this is one of the boards. There were a couple of boards up there where we asked the citizens of Venice as they walked by the booth, tell us about your memories of Venice Middle. Tell us what you think Venice Middle ought to aspire to be. And what you see on this board, I think, is overwhelming feedback from the community. We just asked them to stop by and write on a note, my vision for Venice Middle School is, complete the sentence. And you see just lots and lots of feedback. And when you look at it, there are themes that I think we can kind of put our arms around and respond to. So this is kind of the kickoff event for what these ladies are about to tell you.
Are you going to leave that here all day so that we can have a chance to look at it? Or you? Yeah, because I think that would be very informative for us to be able to read some of those notes. The color coding doesn't have anything to do with, okay.
No, it's just to make it colorful.
It's Mickey's baby, too, so if you want to leave it here, you got to clear that with her.
Yeah, you do.
All right. Karen, are you next?
Yeah, I am.
All right.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent, and good morning, Superintendent White, Mrs. Goodman, and members of the board. Kathy and I are so excited to be here this morning to share with you the great many things that are happening at Venice Middle School, as well as the community engagement plan. To begin. Yep, thank you. To begin, Venice Middle is an ACE school with a dedicated and committed staff. We believe that it is our job to make all students and families feel welcome and that there is a place for every student at our school. Venice Middle is a tech-active STEM smart school, and we have tech-active classrooms in math and science. And next year we hope to add our first language arts tech-active class. A focus for us this year is college and career readiness. We believe this level of preparedness begins at the middle level, and we want our students to be ready for the high school demands, along with the knowledge that students must have to be successful, whether they are college-bound or career-directed. Venice Middle offers an excellent academic program from our gifted academy to our students with special needs. Our students have the opportunity to take high school credit courses as well as advanced math and STEM smart classes in science, technology, and engineering. Venice Middle SAC parents and booster parents, staff and students alike, are very proud of our Venice Middle Young Marines Magnet program. We are the first in the state and the first in the nation to have a full-day Young Marines program in a public middle school with a dedicated teacher core team and a junior ROTC certified instructor. And I'd like to thank Mrs. White and Mr. Lempe for helping us with that. The tenets of this program are founded on leadership, teamwork, and community service. At Venice Middle, our students receive many benefits from our caring community. And when the opportunity to give back presents itself, we are there. These are just 3 pictures of hundreds of photo ops that we have of our students in the service work that they do. You can see the kids are having fun at the Keep Sarasota Beautiful Beach Cleanup, the Mayor's Feed the Hungry Food Drive, and the Memorial Gardens Luminary annual event. Venice students take their core academics very seriously as they do their elective classes. They love to showcase their talents, and there are many at our school. Our daily VMTV Live production keeps us on our toes regarding the day's events. We use TV time not only to inform, but also to teach college and career readiness skills in reading, speaking, writing, and listening. Last November and December, we surveyed our students and parents, asking them what electives would they like to see offered at Venice Middle. And as a result, the Sports Fit program was developed. Sports Fit is 2 periods of physical education, back-to-back, with weight training, fitness, and nutrition. And our boys and girls alike enjoy this class, including some of our teachers who are jumping in as well. Recently, Venice Middle won the 2014 Middle and High School Music Enrollment Award. 53% of our students participate in our arts programs. Additionally, I would like to give him a plug. Ian Ackwood is our current middle school teacher of the year. And this past Saturday, we marched in the Sun Fiesta Parade, which was a lot of fun, with our marching band, our performance chorus, and, of course, our young Marines. You can also see us within the art community as our art students compete and win local art contests and participate in the North and South County art events, including Embracing Our Differences exhibits. I'd like to thank Brian Hirsch and the Kennedy Center for the Arts, because new this January we will be adding orchestra to our band and chorus, and we're excited about that. Our feeder elementary school partnerships are important to us at Venice Middle, and I would like to thank my elementary principal colleagues for being supportive and for understanding that we are their community middle school. In November, the 5th graders will be coming to Venice Middle for a hands-on learning day, and where they will participate in 6th grade language arts, social studies, tech active math, and tech active science classes, along with the 2 electives of their choice. And in December, we will visit our 4 feeder elementary schools to re-engage with these 5th graders about their November visit. Our plan is to bring our current 6th graders to their schools, and they will share what the first year at Venice Middle was like. The overall goal that we have is to create excitement and anticipation for our 5th grade students. We work to provide a smooth, worry-free transition from elementary school through middle school and then on to high school.
And what is the enrollment?
543. Equally important to Venice Middle is our partnerships with our high school. Venice Middle is actively engaged in the high school arts program, namely band and chorus, as well as school events such as the Magical Dinner and the football games and many more of those types of activities. Principal Turgeon and I are working on future opportunities where high school students will be coming to Venice Middle to help with high school readiness and also be a part of other program opportunities at the high school level. Before I turn my part over to Kathy, I just wanted to thank Superintendent White and Deputy Superintendent Lempe for initiating the community engagement plan and for the involvement of our new Director of Long-Range Planning, Ms. Kathy Ebaugh, and her team. Additionally, I would like to thank my Executive Director, Dr. Paige Detman, truly for her continued support and dedication to the students and staff at Venice Middle, and of course our families as well. And my thanks also go to Mr. Gary Leatherman and his team, as well as Jody Dumas and his team. They came together, we met at Venice Middle, and we are working collaboratively on this project. And for me, this is an absolute honor and pleasure and something that I had prayed would happen.
You're going to cry.
No.
She's already done that a couple times.
You're not enthusiastic at all.
Good morning. Good morning. So Scott told you that when I was hired, or before I was even hired, Lori asked me, you're a Venice Middle, you're a Venice resident, you care about Venice. I used to be a planner for the city of Venice. I'm a mom of a Taylor Ranch first grader, So you must care about the community. And I said, of course I do. And she said, would you think about how do we re-engage our community in Venice into Venice Middle? Because there is a perception problem, and there has been a longstanding perception problem. Those of us who live in Venice know about the problems. We talk to, as I call it, the pool circuit. The pool circuit talks about Venice Middle and hush hush, and why would you, just a misperception of what the school is about. And so I eagerly accepted that challenge if I was going to be hired. And even before I started my job, had already started talking and thinking about what this project would look like. So,
and why do you think that's the case?
What, the perception problem? Can I say it? It's the ghost of VAMS. That's Karen's term. It's the ghost of VAMS. It's this idea of what the campus was like when it was much bigger. Venice is a very small community, and we kind of take pride in that we're a small community. And so, and in fact, even when we were doing our engagement this weekend, people asked, what's going to happen when we grow? Because our community, as we're going to talk later, is about to grow considerably. And Venice likes being small, and Venice likes having that intimacy. And so when you get to a certain level with its middle school, it just felt too big for the school, and so there was a perception that things weren't, that the parents lost that intimate control of the school. So, but having spent the last weekend, and yes, Mickey and I are a little bit tired, we're tired, but we're energized, because every parent who had a child, or every student who was at Venice Middle, they were so proud of their school. We had another board up that said, I value Venice Middle because, and we had a hard time for getting those people who are in Venice to go to this board. We're like, okay, we get it. You love our school. Now can you turn and tell us what but I don't have anything to make it better. So, once you're there, Karen said many times to parents, once I get you in the door, you will love us.
And I keep you.
Right.
If I can have you come to the door, we let you, we show you, we tour with you, we have kids talk with you, we keep them. We need to get them to the door.
And that's what this is all about. This community engagement effort is all about establishing and maintaining that relationship that Venice cares so much about having with its schools and with its local service organizations.
With an enrollment at 543, you're actually smaller than most of our elementary schools. What is the capacity at Venice Middle? And that might be...
Well, it could be over 1,000. It has capacity to be it's a large campus.
Oh.
So it has capacity to be much larger. In fact, it was when Northport didn't have a middle schools. That was when Venice area. That's when VAMS existed. So it has capacity to be much longer. But one of the number of things, when you get to read when you get to read the board, you'll see small school. It was very clear that Venice wants to be a small school, and a number of parents asked us, what's going to happen when we do grow, because we are about to grow as a community. And we said, we're already thinking about that. And they said, thank you, please keep us. They don't mind growing a little bit, but they don't want to be 1,000 people again. That's just not what Venice as a community wants to be.
Well, we have 1,400 at Sarasota Middle.
Right.
And they love that, and it seems to be quite intimate anyway. So I think it's, like you say, it's working with the community.
Yeah, it's a perception issue, and we certainly think we can address that. So the project has kind of three major goals, if we can go back to the PowerPoint. One is community ownership, and that is that the community really needs to take ownership of Venice Middle. As a resident, as a mom, as a planner in the city of Venice, I can tell you we own Venice High School like nobody's business. Friday night, the big activity is going to the football games. We own our elementary schools. We take great pride in our elementary schools. We just don't have that same level of ownership for Venice Middle, and we need to change that. So that's number one. What our number one goal for this project is to build that community ownership in Venice Middle the same way we own our elementaries and our high school. And in doing so, improving our campus. We are going to be spending a lot of money at Venice Middle very shortly, and we have opportunities to provide the kind of campus that the community would like to see, and improving our program so that we're meeting the goals of the community. it's very clear that the arts is important to this Venice. That was something we heard a lot about over the weekend. Arts, music. And in creating our program enhancements, that we become Venice's school of choice. We recognize, like Scott said, there are lots of choices in Venice when it comes to middle school, but we want to be the top choice. When parents think about what's next for middle school, we want them to think of Venice Middle, and we want to prepare our students for going on to Venice High School with their engineering and medicine specialties, and also preparing them to go to SCI Northport when it opens, and providing a linkage between Venice Middle and the new campus. The new campus is not a very far distance from Venice Middle, and we heard a lot of parents this weekend asking for those kind of programs. So we see opportunities to provide linkages both to the high school and SCTI Northport. In building that ownership, we want to improve our connections to our community. And when planners talk about connections, we talk about building connections between people and places, especially our schools. That means that we're building connections between people, and we're building those connections between how we get to the important places in our community. That's actually one of the challenges we have in Venice Middle. Although when we met with our Chamber of Commerce director, John Ryan, he said, Venice is growing up to Venice Middle. But at one time, Venice Middle was very much on the outskirts of the community, and it isn't a place that you would naturally go to if you're traveling in the community. The location of it is somewhat of a challenge. We very much see the center downtown area of our community as a heart of our community. So dealing with that locational challenges and building those connections through people and through people to our school is going to be very important as we move through this project.
I don't really see that problem with Laurel Nokomis or with Garden Elementary, for an example, and they're outside of the
Well,
main
Garden
hub.
Elementary isn't really outside. It's kind of when you think of Venice, you think of Jacaranda West. So Garden Elementary is, you go by it a lot as you're getting
Right.
to places.
Right.
And Laurel Nokomis is, because they're a K-8 school, they don't have that same kind of concern as the heart of the Venice community.
But I don't see being ostracized, those schools being ostracized like Venice Middle is a bit. And I know we have a lot of other opportunities, but I think with some promotion that you all are doing, I think we should be able to arise above that.
Absolutely. Because
I think those are old ways of thinking, and the city of Venice and the surrounding area, which I happen to live in, are definitely going to be growing.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that shortly. As part of a different discussion. So I lost where I was. Okay, so the campus improvements. Karen uses the word refresh, and I think that's a really good way of describing what we're doing at Venice Middle. We're not rebuilding the campus. We're not redeveloping it. We're refreshing it. It's a 30-year-old campus, and it's time to relook at it. And we heard from the students especially, and some of the parents who have their children attending there. They were the ones that were getting into the details as to, we want a new cafeteria. We want to look at the parent-teacher pickup area. We want to look at the kind of what do you call it? The darkness, the kind of the
the outside eating area, which they call a cave.
The cave. So, looking at the campus and figuring a way to make it more welcoming. I mean, the campus has a beautiful garden, and we heard that a lot of people are like, it is a beautiful campus once you get there, but we really need to take advantage of the asset that we have in terms of the campus and making it a better place. And establishing this community dialogue and discussing with the community what it wants for its future, building that ownership, and addressing those misperceptions. In fact, just for a second, a quick story. I know we're lacking on time, but one of the most significant things I told Karen after we talked to this gentleman, if we did nothing else for the 3 days that we were at Sun Fiesta this weekend, this one discussion was worth being there. It was a gentleman who Karen has a great way of introducing herself to the young kids. And she said, how old are you? What grade are you in? And she said, I'm in 5th grade. I'm at Garden Elementary. And she said, well, I'm going to be your next principal. And the mom and dad looked and said, yeah, I don't think so. And so, but the dad was willing to talk to us. And a lot of the parents who had that same attitude, they just kind of kept walking by. But this one came in, he started talking to us. He had planning concerns. He was very concerned about the future growth and how that would increase too much the population at Venice Middle in his perception. So we talked to him about the planning that we're working on in that effort in terms of growth management, and then Karen talked to him about what the instructional program and what the environment of Venice Middle is like. And we, in a half-hour discussion with this gentleman, we took him from no, I don't think so, to Karen is working on putting together a stakeholder group that will include future parents, current parents, and some students to help us guide this year-and-a-half effort that we're starting. And we said, "Would you join?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "I'm in on this." He for one thing, he was very impressed that we were there at the festival, because I don't remember us ever seeing a school asking me what they want of my future. So he was impressed with that we were asking the right questions, and that we were admitting that there might be room for improvement. So we really believe that if we take this opportunity to engage the community, they're gonna come along with us and be welcome in this discussion. So this is our project. This is our tentative schedule. But one thing about community engagement, schedules always change. So I'm going to caveat to say this is subject to change. But right now we are listening to the community. We are listening. We are not responding as much. It's you just have to hear what they have to say, because if you automatically have a response for them, they feel like, well, why did you ask me? Because you already know what you want. We have in planning, we call that the FDOT model. When you bring out ideas when you've already established what they were, and then you go, don't you love it? Well, you've already decided you love it. So we're listening to the community. We're going to be doing that in multifaceted ways. We're going to obviously be doing the community events, which we will continue to do through the festival season. We will also be, in January, starting an online engagement tool. We're going to be using Mind Mixer, which if you'd like to go Google and see what it is, but it's an online engagement tool that is basically a public forum for community engagement, but it's done online rather than in person. And then we'll be doing the in-person one-on-one workshops with the small tables. So this is going to allow for as many people to participate in this effort as possible. We've already got a great start, but we know that we're not done. So we're going to continue that through the spring of this year, through the spring of 2015. After we've learned and listened, then we're going to develop some alternatives for the community, present them back their alternatives, and have them confirm with us what the direction they'd want to go. Then in the summertime, as we prepare for next school year, we will respond to the community by developing a community plan or a school plan for Venice Middle's future. We will bring that to the community, have them confirm with us that the plan is going to head them in the right direction, and then we will ask for your confirmation of the plan sometime in the early winter of 2016. So we will ask you to say, yes, this is the right direction for Venice Middle. This is the direction we want to take the community and the school, and it confirms that what the community said to us had value.
And will we do Northern Italian? I think that's great, but I think that's what gave, I think, some of our dialogue with the community on Venice High School, which was so great, is why that we now have such a buy-in. And, of course, then the Performing Arts Center is only icing on the top. But I think that we had such great partnership with the City of Venice and with the community. Right. And, of course, there was a whole dialogue years ago about moving Venice High, which didn't go over very well, off the island.
Yes, I was a planner for the city at the time. Before you were
superintendent, I'm sure you didn't.
I was sitting as a planner of the city at that time, so I remember that discussion well.
So, but I think that the community is very engaged with Venice High School and all the things that happen at Venice High School. So we just need to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
At Venice Middle.
And we're going to get there. In fact, Karen and I are meeting with the city manager and the planning director for the City of Venice on Thursday, and we are going to be asking them to do a similar presentation like this to the board of the city city commission and the planning commission.
Good idea.
So we are looking to establish a strong partnership because, as Scott has said, we're not only going to hear about things about our school, we're going to hear about things about the community. So they need to be a partner with us in this effort.
Mrs. Zucker.
That's more or less what we've been trying to do with all of our schools lately. That's what we did with Booker High School, and we were able to get that road closed.
Right.
So we know that community engagement is really key in order to get them to appreciate and have their voices heard.
Yep.
We've seen that as we've gone through the community. We've done that with Sarasota High School. So it's not just one area. But I know Venice, being part of it, because that was my total district the last time I was on the board. So I'm very aware of Venice and Venice's needs. So
Yeah,
you're doing a great job.
we're a
Karen, you're
unique
awesome.
little place.
Mrs. Ziegler, do you have a comment?
I just want to say I think this is wonderful. I think the ownership, getting this community involved and making them participate in the conversation and hearing back, I think that's exactly what we all, and I know we have done it over time and time again, and I believe it proves to be successful. I can't wait to read that stuff over there, but are we posting that anywhere where the community can see what the feedback was? Okay.
This was just a beginning
Kickstarter.
piece. When we get to the alternative stage, then we'll start asking for more feedback. But we don't want, right now we want people to feel trusting that they can just give us our ideas without having somebody be critical of those
Very good,
ideas
yeah.
just yet. And just to wrap up, the final piece, and the reason this is so important to put this in a plan that you will adopt and have this, is that gives us something that we kind of our marching orders. It gives us something to follow as we move forward. We know that what we're starting with in the refresh is just the beginning, and that it's going to take a long-term commitment on our part, and that's why the plan is so important. But to also your note of other schools, just so you know, there are 2 other engagement efforts that we're going to be kicking off very shortly here. We're going to be doing one, and we're going to be continuing the one with the Alta Vista community and asking the Alta Vista community, both in terms of the high school and the elementary school, how can we better engage? We're a major part of their community. We sit right in the heart of their community, so we're going to be starting that effort. And we're also going to be doing a community engagement effort with our partners at the library as we move forward in starting our plans for SCTI Northport. So we already have 2 other efforts that we're going to be kickstarting, and Mickey and I have some more sleepless nights ahead of ourselves.
Trying to say.
Mrs. Brown?
Thank you for this presentation. Oftentimes, the community out there who aren't necessarily involved in our schools criticize us for, doing things either by ourselves or from the state or from the federal government, and we're not involving teachers, we're not involving parents. And I think this shows exactly how we do pull these groups together and we do take their input, because that first piece that we saw about the instructional, that was so much involved. And now we're seeing here how we're involving, the parents, the teachers, the students, and even the community at large. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And while we're on that, on November 6th, I believe we're having an open house for the Venice Performing Arts
Yes,
Center.
we are. We're having a ribbon cutting.
Ribbon cutting. One of the things that comes up on there, and maybe we can put that on our workshop for next month to discuss, is the issue of should those organizations be allowed to sell alcohol. And
that was in the paper on Saturday in the Venice Gondolier, I understand, and Mr. Hollick has a lot to say. Mayor Hollick has a lot to say about that. Yeah, I think at some point in time we will address it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
A year or 2. But I just want to say the Alta Vista neighborhood in particular, we had an issue with the tennis courts, which didn't make anyone love us, and I think that's a great place. I think what's happening at Sarasota High School is absolutely phenomenal. And last night I was with Sarah Beth Kalasian, who's the director of our Sarasota County Libraries, and she's so excited about the partnership in Northport, as we all are, and really looking forward to that. And I think that gives us, I'm hoping that we will find in the future a lot of other ways of partnering with a lot of other community interests. Having health clinics or whatever with the county or with the sheriff's department or whatever. I think there's a lot of opportunity for partnerships and eliminating duplication of effort. But I think this kind of outreach this is the perfect place to start, Karen.
Well, thank you.
And I'm happy for you because
Thank you.
well deserved. You've done a great job at at Venice Middle, and it's not forgotten that you were an A school and that you are doing exceptional things with those students.
Well, thank you. I've been very excited. I've been principal for 8 years and 2 years as AP there, and I love my school. I love our community, and I think that what I learned this weekend, spending time in our booth, was that the community does have a voice, from fifth graders on to retired folks, former teachers, lay people, and everyone in between. And as you can see by the stickers, they really thought about the two questions and they responded happily. Some we had to encourage a little more to participate, but that's okay. We're going to win them. But my last slide is, and I just wanted to show that last slide if we could, and it talks about 6 schools, 1 team, and I think that's a great way to end our presentation today, and that is that I'm very excited to work with my colleagues, my elementary colleagues and my high school colleague, and that we are 6 schools in immediate Venice, but we are 6 people, but we are 1 team, and this team is what connects us to our families, connects us to our community, and we bridge the gap between elementary to middle to high for that smooth transition. And I am happy to be stuck in the middle, literally, and being a part of this Venice community of schools. These are fine people that I work with, and they are doing everything they can to help support this initiative as well. So it's been it's been a whirlwind, I have to say, but it's been great all along the way, and I can't wait to see where this goes.
Well, thank you for taking your weekend to be there. I know the bed races were great, and that the entire event was very well received and a wonderful event. But thank you for your taking your time. That probably was one of the better places for you to get a good cross-section of the community, better than many other things that I can think of. So thank you for doing that.
I'm going to say thank you to Karen and to her vice principal, Paula. Having the two of them in our booth made all the difference. You know, Mickey and I are staff, and the community looked at us in some ways as staff. But when Karen and Paula spoke, they were like, wow, you know, it's one thing for your planning team to come out because that's their jobs. It's another thing completely for your vice principal and your principal to come out because it's not their jobs, and the community really gravitated towards having them in the audience, having them with us. So we appreciate the partnership.
Besides which, Karen's enthusiasm rubs off on you. How in the
I'm
world
going to win them
you
one by one, you know, one by one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And now we'll move right along. The Fruitville edition. Scott Limpy and Ernie Dubose, please.
Hello again, board members. Mrs. White.
Welcome.
Just by way of introduction, I don't know that all of you have had the opportunity to meet or work with Mr. Ernie Dubose, but Ernie is the project manager that, among other things, built Booker High School.
Right.
Everything on that project went right. It was on time. It was in budget. It was funded appropriately. The value of the community engagement has changed the relationship between the school board and particularly the Newtown community. And if you asked me to put my finger on the one thing that made it all work, I'd point at Ernie. And I tell you all that just to know that the Fruitville project is in great hands. So,
well, that is very true with Booker High, and I hear that from my friends in Newtown a lot. And I want to thank you for all you did. And when I go on that campus, it's like, oh, this is the most beautiful campus. It's really a unique and special place. Thank you.
Thank you. And from a project manager's perspective, it was challenging. Remember, we had 2 CMs, we had 2 architects, and so there were some unique challenges there. What we'd like to talk about today, just for a few minutes, is Fruitville Elementary School. Just as kind of a reminder to the board, when you approved the 14-15 budget, that budget included the addition of a classroom wing at Fruitville Elementary School to the tune of right around $7 million. The philosophy behind that was kind of twofold. To the extent that we can get rid of or at least reduce the reliance on portables on that campus, but more importantly, get the autism program into a facility designed to support autistic kids. So the project is in the budget today. We have our design team on board now, and correct me if I do any of this wrong, but our architect is Sweet Sparkman.
Correct.
Our general contractor is John Swift, Inc. Dr. Laura Kingsley, the principal, Ernie, planning, facilities. There's a big group, but those are the key players on our design team. As the design team sat down and began to talk about this project, there were a number of things that we said, if we're going to do this right and leave this campus in a way that we would like to leave it, there's some things we need to talk about we haven't talked about yet. To a project manager, what that means is scope creep. So what we'd like to do a little bit is talk about a change in scope. Change in scope almost always comes with change in budget. In this case, I think collectively the changes we're talking about add up to about $650,000. There is a motion on tonight's board agenda that is an amendment to the capital budget that, if today's conversation goes the way we hope it does, and you act on that budget amendment, we would amend Ernie's project to add $650,000 to the project. Certainly before we did that, though, we want to be real transparent with you about what it is we're doing or not doing, so that you can see what that scope change buys you, literally. And so what I'd like to do now is just turn it over to Ernie and ask him to talk to you about some of the key things that we'd like to do that currently are not in that project budget. Ernie?
Thank you, Scott. There you go. Again, when we start out as a design and construction team, particularly as the construction services department, our goal is to meet the scope at hand within the budget and time frame we're given. And we, of course, set out to do that with Fruitville Elementary. During that process, as we had the design team on board, the construction management team, and started to solicit the opinions and the input of the end user, which is our instructional staff, instructional administrators, teachers, etc. There were some discoveries on the project. We've got 3 points in our agenda here. The location of the building was the first item that came up from the team, and as we began to really do our due diligence, we discovered that where we had planned to put the building within the budget was not the best location. And the best way to illustrate that is if you turn to, in the packet, there are 2 site plans in your packet. There's a site plan option B, and that's simply option B because option A was a single story in the same spot, but option B was the original scope that met the budget. That was what we proposed to build within the budget at the location. If you look at the other site plan, option B1, it's the same building, however, it is more interior of the campus. And I hate to go back to Booker High School, however, if you remember, one of the challenges were inclusion. We rerouted a road. We did a design so that the students who used the new facilities that we were building were included into the existing campus. There wasn't a sense or perception of exclusion. And so this situation is presenting a similar challenge for us. So that option B01 provides the location of the building within the interior confines of the campus. The benefits to this would be, again, the inclusion. This classroom wing will replace the portables that currently serve our special needs kids at Fruitville. This building location would provide that inclusion. It would provide a better safety and security on a day-to-day and functional operational sense as issues and problems arise with the students and they need support from the administration building. As you can see, this location is a closer proximity to the administration building, which is building 3. So it would provide a quicker reaction for the staff to support the students within that building. Also, just from a general efficiency, operational and functional efficiency, this building location is located in a better proximity to the cafetorium, which is to the right, building 9. Again, the administration building, the front parent parking drop-off and parking lot where many of these kids, again, are walked into their classroom by their parents who park on the loop. And then the media center, it also provides a more centralized location. So Inclusion, safety, security, general efficiency, operational and functional efficiency, and then just a unified campus from, again, a safety and security standpoint. That's the benefits of the new location.
Could I add something before you leave that? If you're familiar with this campus, and I actually did this with Dr. Kingsley, but if you walk out to the campus and you just stand on these two sites, stand on the site over kind of by the security trailer, or stand on the site where there are covered PE areas today, and you kind of ask yourself two questions. Number one, where are the opportunities for a student, for example, who might run as a part of their disability? What are the opportunities for them to run? Where do they occur? Moving between classrooms, going to the cafeteria, going to the library, all those kinds of things. And then you stand in these two locations of proposed site for this building. You say, where is that likely to occur? It's kind of a no-brainer that the second site option here is the right thing to do. The second is if you stand in either of those cases and you say, something happens and I need to respond, and I am where the guidance counselor is, where the behavior specialist is, where the administration is, and you say, what's my response time to get there? Again, it's a no-brainer. So if you just go on the campus and ask yourself, where are these things going to occur, this second site option just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that...
Well, it gives us a lot of safety and security for our kids, and that's the big deal right there. And we're sure that we've got the right number of what it's going to cost to make these changes, because I always work with the premise that any time in renovation you have at least 25% set aside for those unplanned events when the wall collapses and you thought the ceiling was X, Y, or Z. So we feel like we got the right number here.
We do. And again, our request for budget is broken into three categories. Yep. The location, which, the main cost impact there is we have to relocate the covered pavilion, which is a big cost, the covered basketball courts, and then the relative location to the central energy plant. If you notice Building 13, the central energy plant is over to the north, which would be the left on your page if it's up, depending on which way you have it facing. But Building 13 is a central energy plant. So again, placing the building in the desired location, there's longer runs for chiller lines, for electrical lines. And again, we have our CM on board and contracted, so we're pretty comfortable with these numbers and the cost impact of locating the building there.
And that's Swift?
That is Swift, yes.
I like the fact that you've brought the covered playground area closer to the buildings. Before it was you brought it closer to the building, so I like the whole plan. It seems tighter than it was.
Yes, I like the new plan too, and I'm like, why didn't you think of that sooner? I'm not envisioning where the parking lot is. Is it on the plan and I'm just not seeing it, or
it is actually not on the plan?
All right,
we haven't designed it.
That explains why I didn't see it.
The one parking lot simply will be if you look at Building 13. And go to the right of it. If everyone has their paper, kind of with the title block at the bottom. So we're extending the scope of this project did include the acquisition of the church property, which everybody's familiar with. And once we acquire that property, we extend the bus loop as you see it on both plans presented. So that extra space between Building 13 and the bus loop will be one of the new parking lots. The other new parking lot will be in between Building 6 and 5. There are 7 portables dotted out there to the bottom. It would be to the bottom left of your page.
9 and 5?
9 and 5, yes.
I'm sorry, 9. I'm sorry.
6 and 5 was going to be a really bad parking spot.
I know.
That's not a good parking lot. Okay.
Buildings 9 and 5, where the 7 portables are located, those portables, of course, would be removed, and the other parking lot would be there. And that's actually parking lot number 1. That's the main parking lot that we would like to get in the project. The other parking lot at the bus loop is parking lot B if there was a hierarchy of kind of overflow parking and staff parking to go in that location. And again, with those parking, and not to skip around, but since we're on the subject of the parking lots, the impact of those lots and what makes those lots important are traffic. The morning, if you've been there in the morning, the afternoon, you understand the traffic woes they have. By splitting the locations, it provides the school to better facilitate those traffic jams, because you can assign teachers or certain teachers to one lot, you can assign visitors or parents who walk their kids into another lot, and then you can assign the other staff or administration to a third area or lot. So,
and there's never enough parking when there's an event at the school.
Exactly. And it gets rid of our dependency on the church. Currently the church allows us to park across the street, so going back to that safety and security, you have people walking across the street, and then just the dependency of the school on that agreement with the church for us to utilize. So if we provide our own parking for the long term, it really gets rid of that dependency, long-term dependency issue. And then,
yes, could you tell me how much is left now in the capital reserve? After we
the last number, and it's a number that's hard to answer because it depends on how you approach the funding of SCTI. The last number I saw was about $9 million, but that did not include the funding of the SCTI, your portion of the library, which is also in tonight's budget amendment, which is about $2 million. So that would put us at about, don't hold me exactly to the number, but about $6 million.
That's good.
all right.
You're nodding. Does that jive with what?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I'm nodding because that's good.
Yes.
You're going to let them do that.
Yes.
So any other questions?
Just the one last piece is the renovation of Building 8. That's about a $200,000 financial impact. And again, the main point of that renovation is to provide, there's a space that exists. It does not currently support the new building. We also need to provide a occupational therapy room for where it's currently in a portable. So renovating that room within Building 8 and doing the renovations on Building 8 provides us to provide that, not only that occupational therapy room, instead of putting it in the new building, which is more expensive for new construction versus renovating an existing area, but we also plan on doing a science lab and an extra classroom to support the building, the new building that we're building. So the students that are in the new classroom wing will go to the corner that, again, if you look at the plan, Building 8, we're going to renovate that side that's adjacent to the new building, and it will provide for the students in the new building to utilize the occupational therapy room, which will be right there adjacent, and the science lab.
And what is our enrollment at this school, and what is our capacity?
Is her enrollment
Six.
I think it was right around 700.
I thought it was a high sixes.
And there are probably 20 portables on this campus total, so she's over capacity in terms of the permanent structure pretty dramatically.
And will we be getting rid of those portables?
Yes.
Yes.
All of them?
All of them.
Yay.
We're getting rid of all of them, but there will not be, we're doing pretty much room for room. So we're not providing any extra classrooms, but we're replacing each portable out there. There'll be no more need for portables.
I'm going to add a hurrah here from Carol Todd, because that was one thing she was always pushing for, to get rid of those portables on the Fruitville campus there. So
Right.
I know you're still thinking of her.
Well, in fact, if you remember when we voted on, there were 3 or 4 schools that were all kind of in competition, and I know Dr. Todd clearly had Fruitville at the top.
Yes.
So.
But I am too, because the therapy room where we had those squeezies where you put the kids through, I mean, there was never enough room to administer that program correctly. So I'm very happy to see that this will happen, because it was just all squeezed into a little spot, and those kids need much more room than that. So this is fantastic.
I like this. I think this makes good sense.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Well, you had me at increased safety and security.
There you go.
Remember that.
That's always important. Thank you. You'll have a good
That's
one.
one board member.
And now we're going to talk about growth management, something near and dear to everyone's heart. And that will be Scott Limpy and Kathy Eba. Welcome back, Kathy.
Thank you.
I actually have on my notes, introduce Kathy, but I guess I don't have to do that anymore. What we'd like to do is talk just a couple of minutes about growth management. One of the things on your agenda this evening, and I think it's on new business, is a motion to ask the county commission to extend the moratorium and impact fees for an additional year. in that year, we would study in a comprehensive way growth in Sarasota County. Not only what's happening with development, what are our school capacities in the long term and short term, what are the impacts of things that we can't control, like the growth of our charter schools, and ultimately in that study include, as part of that comprehensive study, a recommendation on should we assess impact fees, yes or no, and if yes, what should the value of those impact fees be. So what Kathy would like to do is just take a few minutes and talk about growth management in general and some of the moving pieces that underlie that, with the goal of saying we would like to engage the services of a consultant to help us do a fairly comprehensive growth management study over the next school year so that you have some confidence in what your impact fee really is. Okay.
Good morning again. I think the last issue was a little bit easier, but this is nonetheless critically important. Growth management is what land use planners like myself spend a lot of time thinking about, and how do we direct the growth and channel the growth so that we provide the right levels of services to our citizens so that they can live, work, and play in a high quality of life. That's critical mission for us as planners. So when I started my job and it was presented to me that our education facility impact fee would be expiring this year, Scott asked me to start looking at where we are today. And I said, where we are today is very different than where we were in 2004, which was when our current impact fee study was done. And the conditions of 2004 to 2014 and this decade have dramatically changed. For one thing, in 2004, we were at a peak of development in this county. Our property taxes were very high. People were coming here very quickly, and we were doing our best just to provide great places for people to live and the services and infrastructure systems that they needed to have that quality of life that I talked about. Then, and I don't think many planners saw this because we don't own crystal balls, the market changed dramatically in about 2008, 2009 period. And suddenly what we were planning for was not necessarily what our current future was looking like, and we didn't know when things would start to change. The good news is over the last year, we've definitely seen that growth is that the changes coming back. Our quality of life is bringing back new residents. It is bringing back residents who had left us during the downtime. And that means that we need to reevaluate this question of how do we provide great levels of service for our schools to the people who are going to live here, not only for those who have students in the system, but because having great education systems matters for all of us, no matter what your generation of life. So, as outlined in the memo, we gave you a few indications of where some of those changes since 2004 have happened and how that is affecting our ability to procrastinate and figure out what is the best way to provide the services in education that our community deserves and expects. We've talked to the issue 1 talks about the residential development. It shows just an unincorporated county, and that does this. The bar graph that's presented does not include the municipalities, but they have. If we had bar graphs for all of them, you'd see, especially in Northport, the city of Sarasota, and the city of Venice, that they're all experiencing some growth. We have the school board. Sarasota County School Board is very unique amongst some of our partners in that we lead a team of planners who every other month get together and talk about growth management issues as it relates to schools, as well as we have a representative from the MPO, which is the Transportation Planning Organization. So all of us planners get together, we talk about these issues, and working with my colleagues, we've kind of identified 5 major growth corridor areas in the North County, which has been a traditional growth corridor area for us along the Lakewood Ranch area, that now is extending itself to the Fruitville corridor. If you go down further, moving south along the corridor of Clark Road, both east and west, the west side being infill development, the east side being new development. Then when you get to the city of Venice, There's a large growth corridor that's going to be coming about that will start at I-75 and head towards the east towards the Mayaca, and all of the development area within that area for the city of Venice. And you continue further south, and you kind of have the triangle between the city of Venice, city of Northport, and city of Englewood. That's in the area that I live in. My husband recently asked me, what's happening between us and Northport? And I said, a new city. And he said, no, really. And I said, no, really. Basically, everything, along River Road down to Englewood, up 776 and 41. Of course, that's centered by the West Villages project, which is partly in the unincorporated county and mostly in the city of Northport. But there are other developments along those corridors that we need to be considering. And then there's Northport, which on its own is a growth corridor that is a platted lots, as you know, and they can thereby have vested rights to build tomorrow. And we have really no planning and timing of that development because they have the right to pull a permit immediately. So when you look at those 5 growth corridors, what does that mean for us in schools? Well, we're not completely sure. And that's because in 2004, we had a fairly good sense that Lakewood Ranch and Northport were our main corridors of development, but we don't know the timing of how these 5 corridors are going to happen. How quickly are they going to happen? Are they going to happen like they were in 2004, where you opened your eyes and there was a new development immediately, or are we looking at a 5, 10, 20-year development pattern? Those are the kind of questions that we would like to know better as we move forward in understanding how growth and how development in our county is going to affect our ability to provide the services that our students expect and our parents demand. The next thing that we need to evaluate is our existing capacity. We talked a little bit earlier about Venice Middle. Venice Middle is one of those examples where we have a school that has existing capacity without changing it. So how much growth can we put in schools where we already have capacity? How does that possibly change? There's some different alternatives that you can do with our existing schools, and how do we meet that demand without building any new facilities? We also have property both within Lakewood Ranch, and we're working with the West Villages project. So that we have other land that we've purchased in the city of Northport that we already own. So we have schools that have capacity. We also have land where we can build capacity without having to buy new land, which is one of the major ways we spend our money that we get from our educational impact fees.
And we have an elementary, a middle, and a high school piece of property in Northport.
Right.
And we were looking at buying property out east of 75 at one point to put another high school out that way, since we have everything is well within the corridor of the urban service boundary. But looking at things out in that area, are we still looking at for an additional high school property? We kind of put that off.
Well, that's part of the question, Jane, that we are looking at as part of the study. We want to make sure that if we're going to buy new property, where are we going to place it? Are we going to place it in the location that will meet and accommodate the growth that's expected? So part of the study is not only to look at the capacity and our ability to meet that capacity, but if we need to expand new capacity, and that's issue number 3, actually, so you led me very well. Issue number 3 is, where would we put new capacity? Where would we purchase land if we need new land? And that's a question we have to determine. Where would we do that and make sure that it's in location